Okay, hopefully everybody's on. Hello and welcome to the webinar, Make Your Employee Training Stick. My name is Jason Silberman. I'd like to thank you all for attending the webinar today, in which over the course of the next 60 minutes or so, we'll take a look at how we can transform employee training, often seen as a process that's dull or burdensome, into something more engaging, memorable, and one which will leave a lasting impact. Now, before I get started talking about our presenters and the agenda for today's webinar, I just want to mention that there will be time for answering a few questions towards the end of the webinar today. In order to ask a question, feel free to submit it in the chat section on the bottom of the screen. Okay. Additionally, we invite you to ask questions and interact with others on Twitter. As you can see on the screen, the hashtag for today's webinar is TrainingStick. One word, TrainingStick. You also see the Twitter handles of You also see the Twitter handles of myself, T-Station Blog, Bunchball, and WalkMe Inc. We'll keep track of the hashtag and we'll try to answer some questions a bit later. Finally, at the end of the webinar, we're going to have a poll question in which you can participate in, asking you what the biggest challenge is to effective employee training within your organization. So feel free to participate. A bit about the presenters today. Again, my name is Jason Silberman. I'm the editor and lead writer of a blog called Trainingstation. A blog, it's focused on issues relating to employee learning and performance. In addition, I have an ebook which came out in May called Express Train, How to Accelerate Employee Time to Competence. So you can go on my blog and to access that as well. We will also be hearing from Rajat Paharia a little bit later. He's the founder and chief product officer of Bunchball, an industry leader in gamification, which helps companies to create employee experiences during training which are engaging, memorable, and collaborative. We will also hear then from Ali Tamam of WalkMe, who will discuss ways to directly link training to performance in order to ensure a smooth and quick transition from training to everyday day-to-day tasks. Okay, just before we get started, we'll go over just very quickly today's agenda. I'll be presenting for about 5 more minutes on the top challenges facing training managers within organizations today. We will also look then at some of the general goals, objectives that we're trying to get out of employee training. We will then hear some ways how to utilize big data, motivational science, and gamification to create engaging employee experiences, driving employees to participate, focus, collaborate, and learn. At that point, we will hear about a unique direct online guidance and employee performance support system, which again ensures a link between training and performance and everyday tasks. And finally, at the end of the webinar, over the last 5–10 minutes, we have some time for questions and for the poll question and for anything else just as a conclusion, at the conclusion. So just very quickly, a bit of background. Employee training is more important than ever before. Due to customer demands, employee morale, employee productivity, and employee turnover, as well as the economic realities of a highly competitive workforce, just some of the reasons for establishing and implementing training within an organization. In addition, there have been changing technologies that we've seen in the way people work over the last 10–15 years especially. More and more work is computerized. And in addition to that, over the last 5 years or so, due to the mobile explosion of smartphones and tablet computers, we've seen that people are accessing their work from places inside and outside the office at any time and from a wide range of devices. So because of that, it's especially important to increase employee training to maintain that momentum so people have the necessary skills in order to meet the technological challenges of today. Especially, due to the technological revolution, there are a new set of skills which are needed, which organizations need to always train and keep their employees up to date with. For example, as you see on the screen, according to McKinsey, 85% of U.S. new jobs created in the past decade have required what they call complex knowledge skills. So training, as you see, plays a key role in helping to foster and grow those skills. And due to the technological revolution that we've seen and the necessity of those new skill sets, I would say that adaptability and flexibility are more important than ever before in order for both at an organizational level and at an individual level for employees to always stay up to date and ahead of the game. We'll look at the top 3 challenges, let's say, facing training managers these days, one of which, of course, everybody is familiar with, is limited budgets. I say things are getting better. But first, the bad news, the recession did hit training budgets particularly hard. For example, even at the beginning of the recession in 2007, according to Burson, the U.S. corporate training market shrank from 58.5 million that year to just the following year, 56.2 million. At the time, it was the greatest decline in more than 10 years. And at an individual level, U.S. companies spent just over $1,200 per employee, while 5 years later, due to the strong blow of the recession, on average, companies spend about $500 less at $706 per employee. The good news is that things are back on the rise. So, for example, overall spending on training rose 12% on average in 2012, but we're still not at the numbers that we saw before the recession. So hopefully the good news will continue. Challenge number 2, this is a question that many people are familiar with in training, the question of what's in it for me. Often employees will see training as something that's burdensome for them and they don't want to be there. They feel like they're being pulled away from their everyday tasks. This is true both with new employees as well as with veteran employees as well. So it's very important to always try to keep training relevant to daily work, and that the employees understand the value, the direct value of training, both for their own personal professional growth as well as the success of the company. So it's very important that training remains relevant. You do not want to make training too theoretical or abstract. And finally, you don't want to overwhelm employees during the sessions themselves. Realize that training is not, to use a baseball example, it's not a first inning event and then employees go on to learn for the rest of their careers. Training and learning in general is a long-term process. You don't want to, as I said, to overwhelm employees during the initial sessions themselves. You want to try to keep those sessions as short as possible or in spurts. People learn better that way, and it's for them to be able to practice what they've learned and apply it following which. Finally, the third challenge that I wrote down, which is essentially the topic of today's webinar, how do we make training stick? That, as we'll hear today, everybody wants to make training as engaging as possible, as memorable as possible. But with that said, only a portion of the material is fully absorbed and transferred. Many of us have heard the 20% statistic. Whether that's true or not, whether it's more than that or less than that, it's kind of besides the point. Everybody does agree that only a portion of the knowledge transferred during training is fully absorbed. And even following the best training, there is still a gap that exists between the end of those sessions and the period when employees work fully independently and proficiently. So we want to make that gap as short as possible. It's a key challenge that training and managers face. With that in mind, just finally I'll get to with those challenges, what are we trying to get out of our training at a very basic level? Well, as you can probably guess and as you know, you of course want to get employees up to proficiency levels quickly, and you want to raise their performance and efficiency. That's why we're transferring the knowledge. That's why we're facilitating knowledge, whether it's through e-learning or traditional learning, classroom learning, whatever it might be. We're trying to raise their performance levels. In addition, in order to best do that, we're trying to create training that is memorable and applicable to their everyday work. Again, that it's relevant. You want to raise employee satisfaction and motivation to work hard and succeed. creating a fully engaged and motivated workforce. And of course, in the big picture, we want training and the skills that we impart for our employees to lead to company growth and success, to financial results as well. So with that in mind, I'd like to turn over to introduce now Rajat Baharia of Bunchball. As mentioned before, Rajat is the founder and chief product officer of Bunchball. He's also the author of Loyalty 3.0, How to Revolutionize Customer and Employee Engagement with Big Data and Gamification. So Rajat, please take it away.
Great. Thank you, Jason. So I'm going to pop up my presentation right now. Give me 1 second. All right, so as Jason mentioned, I'm the founder and chief product officer at Bunchball, the leader in gamification. We basically created the industry a couple of years ago, and what I want to talk to you about specifically today is focused all around the topic today, which is kind of training and learning and education. So first off, I just want to start with the definition of what is gamification, because people hear the word game and gamification and they immediately kind of get the wrong idea. So what I want to make very clear to people is when we talk about gamification, these are other kind of phrases we often use to describe it: measure and motivate, reward and recognition, reputation, loyalty, guiding and amplifying high-value activity. But at the end of the day, all these things boil down to this idea of motivating people through data. We've all turned into walking data generators, right? Like if you look at the amount of data I was generating individually 10 years ago, 5 years ago, today, it's gone up exponentially. And the reason that this came out of the world of video games is because if you think about it, from Pong in the 1970s to Call of Duty today, video game designers have always lived in a world where they have had all the user activity data. They have known every single thing that users do in their applications. You jump, you shoot, you die, you kill something, whatever. Like they've known it all. And they've honed and refined the techniques for taking that user activity data and using it to motivate better performance. So fast forward to today, to kind of the real world, where all of us, more and more of our lives are being mediated by technology, and we're throwing off data because everything we're doing is in online systems. And if you're a business trying to figure out how do I take that data and how do I utilize it to motivate the best performance, where are you going to look? You're going to look to the world of video games, where they've essentially been living in the future for the last 40 years, and take the best techniques that they have for motivating performance and appropriate them and use them in your own business to drive better performance for you. So, when people hear the word gamification, they often just focus on the word game, and then they think about things like unproductivity and entertainment and some fuzzy sort of benefit. But nothing could be further from the truth. Really, gamification is about driving better performance by taking the big data that your employees are generating as they're interacting with your systems and using it to motivate better performance and driving a hard ROI. So with that, let's actually go and look at a couple of examples around the learning and onboarding area. I'm going to focus on 3 today that I have. And so the first one is around Adobe Photoshop. So I'm sure many of you out there have used or tried to use Adobe Photoshop before. I used to work for a design company called IDEO, one of the world's leading design and innovation firms, as an interaction designer. And while there, I never learned how to use Photoshop. I was using PowerPoint and Paint by the time I left 4 years later. It was pathetic. And the reason was, it was the same reason that most people have when they open up Photoshop. You're an amateur photographer, you take a bunch of great pictures, now you want to do something with them. So you download Photoshop from adobe.com. It takes you a half an hour because it's a gigabyte, and then another 20 minutes to install it. And after close to an hour, you open up this thing, and you see a blank white canvas with 10,000 panels, menus, and buttons, and you have no idea what to do or even where to start. So what's the likelihood during your 30-day free trial that you're actually going to buy at the end of that 30-day free trial if you've essentially kind of just dropped you in the middle of the desert? And right now it's pretty low. So we worked with Adobe and said, okay, what if we could take the onboarding concepts from games? I mean, most video games, you don't read a manual, you don't go through a training course, you learn by doing. In the first 5 minutes of any game, they teach you how to play by playing. So let's take that same concept and apply it to Adobe Photoshop. So here's the hypothesis. If you can get people exposed to 12 key pieces of functionality in Photoshop, feeling a sense of mastery and fluency at using them, and then learning by doing, then the likelihood that they will buy at the end of the 30 days is much higher. So there's a plugin now. You can actually go download this. If you go search for Level Up for Photoshop, and they have a new version for the new Creative Cloud version of Photoshop. These are screenshots of, I think, 5.5, potentially 6. So this plugin now is an optional install for Photoshop, and when you open it up, it pops up and says, we want you to learn, you want to win. Get ready to learn some of the cool features of Adobe Photoshop and have a chance to win the full version. So you earn these points in this case that give you a chance to win more Adobe product. My hypothesis at the beginning of this program was that that was almost completely beside the point in this particular case, that these users had already spent an hour of their life to get to this point. Clearly they wanted to know how to use Photoshop. And it turned out that I think around 60% of the participants in this application were from outside the US, where the points weren't usable anyway. So I think that actually turned out to be true. So here's the hypothesis: get people exposed to these 12 key pieces of functionality. So the way we built this with these guys was there were 12 missions, each of which exposed you to a key piece of functionality, split across 3 levels, and you couldn't get to level 2 until you finished all the level 1 missions. And so click to the next screen, and first mission you see is remove red eye from a photo. You get 30 points for doing that. But first you need to enter in your name and your email address, because we need to know who you are so that we can track your activity over time. And then immediately the user gets the first time login badge and 20 bonus points. So this might seem kind of stupid, because why are you giving people points just for doing something really simple at the beginning? But if you think about it, it makes perfect and complete sense. There's this thing called the endowed progress effect. If I'm running a car wash and I have 2 customers, and I give customer A a punch card that says get 10 car washes and you'll get one free, or I'm sorry, 8 car washes and you'll get one free, and I give customer B one that says get 10 car washes and you'll get one free, but I've already pre-filled the first 2. Both customers still have to get 8 car washes to get a free one, but customer B, the one that has 2 free stamps in their 10 card, is more likely to fill up the card and will fill it up faster, because they have a task that's 20% of the way done versus 0% of the way done, and is an unfinished task versus one that hasn't even been started, and we're compelled to finish tasks. So just that alone, if you look at the way we always design these programs, there's kind of a difficulty curve, right? It starts out easy, 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 slightly harder, and then gets much harder, much harder. It's almost like a geometric curve. And you can think that that kind of curve applies everywhere in life, from like the military to jobs. It's really easy to advance at the beginning, and then things get progressively harder and harder. So that's the idea here, is give people the initial win so that they feel invested. Oh yeah, look, I unlocked one of those badges at the very bottom of the screen, and now I got to get the rest so I can complete my set. So you've done that, and now we're going to skip ahead here to mission 2, which is whitening teeth. In this case, you can either use your own photo or one that was provided as part of the plugin. It tells you exactly what to do down here. Drag the lightness slider to approximately 20 points, etc. And if I need help, I can click on the View Help button to go to the tutorial and video content that's always been there, but that nobody was going through, because people just wanted to get into Photoshop and do something, manipulate a photo. Right? So I love this because it flips the learning model around. The typical learning model is learn and then do. Go through the training course, read the manual, and learn all this stuff that you might use someday, and you have no idea at the time what's going to be important or what's not. Versus this model, which is the do and then learn model. Here is your challenge. Can you do this? If you can, great. If you can't, then go do the learning, but the learning is very directed. It's all about helping you accomplish a goal, and that makes it incredibly sticky. Right? I'm going to remember that. I'm an engineer. When I go learn a new programming language, I don't just pick up the Python book and read it front to back. I have a project in my head, and then everything I'm learning is in service of how do I get that project done. Now on the left side here, you can see my progress bar. I'm part of the way through level 1, how many points I've earned, and at the bottom you can see the badges I've unlocked. Now when I'm with my results, great job. Are you happy? Yes. Mission complete. You've earned 30 points. You've unlocked another award, the Dent Artiste badge. So there's various badges along the way to celebrate milestones and 20 bonus points. You can then actually share that to Facebook or Twitter, and 35% of the people did. They wanted to tell all their friends that they were rocking it at Photoshop, and then that actually, people clicked on that, and it drove more people into the level up experience. And then they had at adobe.com, they had a daily leaderboard that showed who had earned the most points, and a live news feed of all the recent activity. And so if you look at the overall results for this, nearly 40% of the people made it all the way through the entire thing. And the missions got hard at the end. They surveyed both new and longtime Photoshop users, overwhelmingly positive sentiment toward the application. 4 times as many people bought at the end of the 30-day free trial. And then one other thing I thought was really interesting was they found that a good chunk of the users that experienced Photoshop users had missed somewhere in one of the various upgrade cycles some critical piece of functionality that would have made their workflows better. and then they used this tool and they learned it, and then it changed their behavior going forward. So this idea that 5.1, 5.2, 5.5, 6.0, all these releases of Photoshop, new features in there, how do you get people exposed to those features so they know about them? And so the idea now with Adobe, some of the things that they can start doing are every new dot release with new features, add more missions to level up so people can go do them and learn how to use them. Also, as Adobe moves to a subscription model, which I think they've already done, no more box software. You pay a monthly fee for access to one or more of the Creative Suite of software tools. It's imperative that if they want you to subscribe to the entire suite, that you know how to use the entire suite. Otherwise, you're only going to subscribe to the products that you want or know how to use. And so a lot of opportunity here for Adobe. So that was a great example of these gamification techniques being used in a scenario where I wanted to learn. I had this intrinsic motivation, like I want to learn to use Photoshop because I want to edit my photos. Let me kind of flip it around a little bit and say, we're going to use the exact same mechanics, but here's a case where the intrinsic motivation isn't really there. So IBM Connections is a piece of social collaboration software, kind of like if you've heard of Jive or Yammer, or Salesforce Chatter, kind of the Facebook for the enterprise type idea. And it's a very powerful piece of software, and powerful software can be daunting and complex to learn, much like Photoshop. And so, but in this case, it's not the end user who has decided, I want to use this thing. It is the CIO of the company, or whoever's in charge of collaboration, who has said, I'm going to buy this tool, I'm going to deploy it kind of top down to everybody, and everybody's going to start using it, and we're going to be more efficient, we're going to be able to find expertise better, we're going to have better customer intimacy, we're going to develop global networks, all sorts of great stuff is going to happen, but I need you guys to use this. Now that all sounds great from the CIO's point of view, but from the end user's point of view, like us, we're sitting there going great, here's yet another system the CIO is rolling out. I got to learn something new, and I'm really busy. I have to change my behavior. Do I do it in here? Do I do it in email? Do I do it in both? Am I going to look stupid for anything I post in there? Am I going to get fired for anything I post in there? Am I going to make myself any less valuable for contributing content because now it's out there for everybody and it's not in my head, and that's what makes me a valuable employee? There's 10,000 perfectly valid human reasons why these systems often fail to gain traction. So faced with that, if you are the company deploying it or the company selling it, what are you going to do? Because you need to address the people problem. It's not about technology and features and functionality and user interface. It's about how do I motivate these people to want to learn this thing. So there's typically, like in the case of this kind of thing, this enterprise software, there are two key moments of truth. There's the initial adoption, getting people to do something instead of doing nothing, because it's so much easier to do nothing or do what you've always been doing. And then the second is, how do you get them to use it on an ongoing basis? So this particular case, we're going completely after the how do we drive initial adoption, that first hump. How do we get people exposed to the functionality and feeling a sense of mastery and fluency and seeing value out of using the tool? Because once they have, hopefully the value of the tool will take over and then they will continue to use it. So we took those same exact ideas from Level Up for Photoshop and turned them into Level Up for IBM Connections. So you can see here I've got 4 different levels and I've got a bunch of missions to do. And I'm 0% of the way through Level 1. I need to do all the Level 1 missions, all 3 of them, to get to Level 2 before I can do any of those. And so these missions are kind of hard to see because they're grayed out, but the first missions are set up your profile photo and add a photo, or follow somebody, or join a community. So I'm going to mouse over the Learn More button here, and it gives me more details on what I need to do. And this could be video, it could be interactive coursework, it could be pictures, it could be just plain text like we have, but like training kind of embedded directly into where the person is. And then right now I went and updated my profile photo, and you see a little piece of what we call toast pop up in the bottom right-hand corner of the window. Congratulations, you just completed the Get in the Game mission. This real-time feedback, really important. People love it. Like, I did something, I got the real-time positive reinforcement. Great, and now, okay, now we'll do the next one because that was easy. And that just keeps people compelled to want to keep going forward and doing things. Also, automatically posting to the user's wall anytime they complete a mission so that their achievements are automatically and scalably being socialized to the entire company. without them having to do anything. And so now flip back to my profile page, and we can see here my progress bar is filled up a bit. I only have 2 more missions to go. This mission has been marked as complete. My picture has been added to the list of people that recently completed it. Every mission has a list of the pictures of the last 6 people, and it's great. It's a sense of social, of life, activity. I know that this thing is doable, and also if I need help, if I'm stuck on any mission, I've got my built-in help network. I just click on one of their pictures, and it will take me to their page, and I can ask them the question. Also on the right-hand side here, you've got a leaderboard showing some light competition between people who can do the most missions and get to the highest level. And then this is a dedicated element in the profile page, the Level Up Missions tab. But then there's also this little Level Up widget that follows people around throughout the experience to give them a constant reminder of their unfinished business and a suggestion for the next mission to do. So by using this, at the end of this experience, these employees have learned how to do these 27 key pieces of functionality in IBM Connections. They're all identified with the help of IBM Product Management, and they've kind of scaffolded themselves up to a point where they're starting to see that they've gotten familiarity with the tool, they know how to use everything, and hopefully they're starting to see value. So this is some of the feedback from end users. I feel much more competent using it than I did before I started following the Level Up program. That's good. It's kind of the key goal. It's a good way of encouraging people to use it. There's a sort of competition with others as you're racing with other people to complete the missions. And then actually one of the missions was to reply to a forum topic. So this person killed 2 birds with 1 stone. I think this is a really insightful point. It's a great way of pulling people into the practice of using IBM Connections until such a stage that folks discover the value and start using it by themselves. Again, it's getting people over that initial hump, that hurdle, right, of doing nothing. How do I get them to do something and get to scaffold it up to a point where they discover the value and start wanting to use it? And then training can be boring and daunting. I like that it's simple to pick up where you left off and integrate it directly into where you already are. And then the final point, this person wrote an essay, but I love it. It piques your curiosity, if even just a little bit. It makes you ask, what is that? And bam, next thing you know, you've clicked on it to figure out how to get to the next level. There's a self-paced yet motivating. There's a level of competition, and it adds a degree of fun to a learning tool, which is going to be rolled out ready or not. I realize there are several how-to training videos that are very informative, but that's not compelling content to go through. This actually makes it all compelling. So with that, I've got one last example I'm going to talk about. And this one's for Ford of Canada. So Ford of Canada has 450 dealerships across Canada. And every year, the sales and service reps need to learn about new model year cars, new financing plans, new in-car technology, lots of stuff to learn every year. And so they have a portal called the P2P portal developed by our partner Merits Canada. And that's where everybody goes and does all their training and gets all their content. And they had 4 goals with implementing gamification into the P2P portal 2 years ago, and they've continued to do this for the last several years. Drive site traffic, combat underutilization of valuable resources. This is something we hear from a lot of our customers. I've invested all this time and money and energy into video content, into CVT content, into other content, and nobody's using it. How do I get people to use it so I can get my ROI on that stuff? Encouraging both informal and formal learning, and then turn it from I have to I want to. That's the key thing. I mean, like, if you remember nothing else from today, I hope you remember gamification is motivating people through data, and it's about turning I have to into I want to. It's about getting people to want to do things rather than using the stick to force them to do things. So what these guys did was they integrated it into that P2P portal, the learning portal, and the whole goal was to motivate learning, watching informational videos, downloading and consuming the latest product information, and taking web courses. And the gamification mechanics they used, people could earn points, they could level up, they could work toward individual goals, they had badges that appeared in a trophy case, so you can see it up on the screen. Everybody got to pick their own garage with their own new model year car, and they unlocked all these badges on the car. They got to compete with their peers on leaderboards, work together to accomplish team goals, branch versus branch. And so now we have some accountability and some responsibility to your teammates, your peers, to try and win. And then receive real-time feedback as they were doing all these desired behaviors. So the results that these guys saw, a 417% increase in site usage versus the same period the previous year. And within the first 3 months, the traffic to the site exceeded the entire previous year's volume. they saw higher sales and higher customer sat, right? There's this kind of theme throughout all the stuff that we're talking about today. Better knowledge leads to better outcomes, and in this case, it led to better outcomes. The younger audience more engaged, an increase in volunteer learning, which we've seen in several of our customers, participants completing courses above and beyond what's required. So there's a certain amount I need to do to get certified, and people were doing above and beyond, motivated only by gamification. The program increased in engagement month over month as word of mouth spread. And then one last point I didn't put on here was that people were actually getting certified faster. Typically people, and I'm as guilty of this as anybody, will wait until the very last minute to do any kind of eat your vegetables type certification training, stuff I know I have to do but don't really want to do. And in this case, because they were able to turn I have to into I want to, people were actually getting certified faster and more quickly. So with that, hopefully those 3 examples have given you a good indication of how you can use gamification to make training stick. And I'm going to turn it back to Jason. Thanks, Jason.
Thank you very much, Rajat, for that informative and engaging presentation. I especially like that there's a nice mixture between encouragement for collaboration among employees, but also with a healthy dose of competition as well. So it's a nice mixture, I think, in that. Before I just introduce Ari Tamam, I just want to remind people, a friendly reminder, if you have any questions about Bunchball's presentation or about WalkMe's upcoming presentation now, feel free to ask them either in the chat section on the bottom left-hand corner of the screen or in Twitter with the hashtag #TrainingStick. We will monitor those, and following WalkMe's presentation at the end, if we have any questions, and we should have a few minutes to be able to answer them. So one of the things that Rajat also mentioned was the concept of learning by doing, which is, I'm sure, something that Ari Tamam from WalkMe, our next presenter, will speak about as well. So at this point, I'd like to turn things over to Ari.
Thank you very much, Jason, for that introduction, and thank you all for joining this webinar. That was very interesting what we just heard from Rajat and Bunchball about motivating users to enjoy training rather than see it as a bore or a cumbersome extra weight into their day-to-day activities. What I'm going to talk about in the next 20 minutes is really going beyond the motivation and having attended the training and see how we can enhance that training and make it stick. Because while the users may be happy to do the training in the way Rajat has explained, they still may forget what they need to do in order to execute certain processes on the web and in their day-to-day activities. So my name is Ari Tamam. I am the Enterprise Sales Director here at WalkMe, and I'm responsible for addressing customers' pain points and resolving them with the solutions that WalkMe has to offer. In this respect, training and how to improve on those existing practices. So first, let's have a look at the training life cycle, because most of us are familiar with the initial cost and investment in training, which is spent at the beginning. You know, when you acquire new applications and have to onboard new employees, there is still, after that, significant effort down the line. Existing users may be needed to relearn processes that they've previously forgotten. There may be changes to applications. If we look at CRM applications, which are normally highly customized and different from company to company, even if you're using one of the more popular CRM systems. And also merging legacy systems with new software also introduces new practices and new processes that need to be learned. So that is the existing, and also you have further down the line where users who were well trained in a certain application may move out of that sphere, sometimes coming back or having to move into different areas where they also need to be trained. So it's a constant challenge to get it right and to make the training that users have experienced more effective and instilled within them. So let's have a look at the training objective slide again and see what we're up against, because at the end of the day, you want to make your training as effective as possible and long-lasting, so we have a very short time for our users to get to proficiency. So Rajat showed us how to motivate employees to enjoy the training and want to attend the training, and what have they learned, but what about after they finish those sessions and still need to remember the processes of what they've learned? This is where WalkMe comes in, and I'm going to show how we can enhance what your users have learned in the classroom and make it stick afterwards. Because Jason mentioned some statistic of around 20% of what we learn is absorbed But some customers I've spoken to saying it's really as low as 5%. So, is that training really effective? How can we make our users more comfortable with what they've learned and stop them referring to notes or tutorials, or even worse, bothering their colleagues or super users to be able to help them get through certain tasks they need to execute on a day-to-day basis? Let's imagine you've just created a half-day or full-day training session and know that you have covered all the main points that your employees need to know in order to use an application and to execute their day-to-day activities. Many of those employees are now going to be expected to know and execute 20, 30, 50 processes, some of which they will be able to do on a daily basis without any problems. However, there are going to be those longer, more complex, less frequent processes that they also need to remember. They may not have familiarized themselves sufficiently with them and either need to get help or, again, refer back to their notes, which means executing those processes are not going to be so efficient. This is why we should all consider post-training performance support. What does this mean? Basically, you've already learned everything. We said you've absorbed a certain percentage of what you have learned, but you need to have more ability to be able to execute those tasks without bothering anyone to do them efficiently. In other words, how can we enhance the training our employees have received? Creating some sort of follow-up to the classroom training is essential in order to maintain the momentum of the information being absorbed by our employees. And there are a number of ways that we can achieve this. Let's have a look at how. For example, providing to-do lists. This would create, say, a list of tasks, just like Rajat explained, in where you get rewards for executing certain tasks. But what if you don't remember how to do those tasks? How are you going to remember how to execute them? What we're trying to do is to remove the habit of deferring to experienced colleagues or supervisors in order to help us, because we're taking away from our effective time and also taking away from their effective time. So if I can show you an example of how to-do lists can be displayed for users, and then I'll show you a few examples of how you can have on-screen assistance, what we call performance support, for users to be able to execute this while they're getting the assistance on the screen rather than having to refer back to notes or guess. Here you can see this is a solution for a Spring CM, where you can see on the left-hand side there's a few to-do lists, and some of them have been crossed out. That means the user has actually executed that process. Others are still there for the user to execute. This is a way for you training supervisors to be able to validate whether the employees have actually done certain tasks in order to get them familiar with the process. As we all know, practice makes perfect, and the more these users execute those tasks, the more they'll be able to do them, even the infrequent ones, on a basis that is, let's say, once a month, and still have the confidence to do them accurately and error-free. I'm going to leave this next slide on because I think we all understand the business need of lowering employee training costs. These are fairly self-explanatory, but I just want to instill the need for having post-training support for users to be able to do as they execute their tasks. The way WalkMe works is to create on-screen steps. If I can explain this, WalkMe basically creates what we call a walkthrough. A walkthrough would be a process, whether simple or complex, that is broken down into steps. Each step appears on the screen as a balloon with some text explaining exactly what the user needs to do, whether the user needs to click on an element on the screen or whether they need to enter information into a field. The WalkMe balloon will show them exactly what they need to do to advance through the process. This both shows the user how to execute their task and also eliminates any errors that may be caused during their execution, because they either don't know where to enter certain data or they don't know what to click in order to progress to the next step in the process. So this would be as close as possible as having the classroom trainer remain on hand to answer any questions and assist users where they may be going wrong. So if you imagine the situation, the trainer has completed his session, 2 months down the line you've got users who are like sort of floundering around with what they need to do, but because they can activate a WalkMe walkthrough, they should be able to follow the process as if the trainer is there sitting next to them, showing them exactly what to do. So if we can illustrate, WalkMe is like transparency over your existing application. The instructions will appear on the screen if the user needs them. doesn't necessarily have to activate the walkthrough if he already knows what they're doing. But if they don't, it's a simple question of clicking the Help Me Guide or Show Me How button, and that will bring up the relevant processes that the user can choose from in order to show him what do I need to do to execute this process. So it accelerates the training that they've already learned, because even if they've only absorbed, say, 10 or 20% of the information, whatever's lacking will be provided on screen for the user to follow. It doesn't necessarily need to be just an actual process. It can even be an overview of the application to show them the various components that they need to be considering when they do execute a certain process. So I'm going to try and switch between the presentation and go and show you a live picture of my screen. This will just take a second or two to come up on the screen. And I'll show you what I mean when using a familiar CRM system like Salesforce to be able to show you how this would work. So if you just bear with me, we're going to choose this. And what I'm going to do is, you can see a live version of Salesforce screen here. And you can see on the right-hand side, there is this Need Help button. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to click on that, because if you're a new user to Salesforce, even creating simple things like a new account or a contact could, and this will be able to help you do that. You can see on the screen now I have a list of processes: how to create a new event, how to create a new task. I'm going to choose something that is only just about on the screen, because we can also use the search menus here to find the relevant process that I want to do. So here I'm going to try and create a new price book. All I have to do is click on the item, and you can see that straight away on the screen comes up the first step that I need to follow, which is click on the product link. What happens then is I click on the product link, this will load the page, and then it will give me the next step that I need to execute. And again here, it's simply I've got to click on this link, which is Manage Price Books. Now what happens here is, as the pages load, the balloon will up showing you what you need to do next, and here it will be just a simple thing of clicking on New. And I can type in any information here. So it's not just simply clicking through processes. You could be choosing data that you need to enter into a form. It could be selecting a background color or changing the designer for page, or let's say you're creating a new photo album on Snapfish or Instagram and you wanted to design it. It would show you exactly what you need to do to go through the process. So if you were using a CRM system or you're using a financial system for your back office, it doesn't matter. So long as it's HTML based, then WalkMe would be able to escort you step by step through the process. So you wouldn't have any problems executing even the most complex tasks. So let's call this new book for argument's sake. And you can see that the balloon has already identified that I've entered the information into the field, and I can go on to the next step. Now here I can either action what it's asking me to do, or I can continue playing around and enter data into other fields that is not necessarily relevant. But I'm just going to click on the next button, and by doing so it takes me to the last step in the process, which would be simply click on Save. So you can see here, by using something that's an interactive system, you can choose to opt out of the walkthrough. So this will just eliminate the balloon, and then you can start from and you can go to another page. You can start any process from anywhere in the page. What this is doing is really enhancing what you would have learned in a training session or in a classroom, and then have this, let's say, companion, as opposed to going back to a tutorial to follow as you execute. So rather than have to learn something and apply what you have learnt, this means that you can execute while you learn. So however much or however little information you may have absorbed during that training session, you would always be accompanied once you've finished the training session and gone into the real world. So even if you're motivated with the sort of gamification type of approach to training, you would still be really keen to do those tasks, but you may forget, what do I need to do? How do I do the next step here? So rather than grab someone who's going to be bothered, taking away from his time, and also showing you and then you doing, it's all on the screen for you. So you don't need to bother anyone else. You don't need to take any of your time out of your work to learn or relearn a process. You can simply follow the process that's provided on screen. And if we want to take another example, let's say, for example, if you wanted to create a new account, again, this will start you from wherever you need to be started. You just follow the process. Again, these are fairly simple, but we have walkthroughs with some customers that are completely complex and take you all the way through in and out different applications and gets you to the end game without any problems. So let's call this account. Again, it's going to ask me what else do I need to do, so let's call this parent. And you can see that you even scroll up and down to see what where you need to choose. Let's call that the partner, and then we click Save. So it's very simple to get you from one step to the other. So even if you do make an error, WalkMe will identify that error and say, look, oh, you made something wrong. You need to choose something. This doesn't match. Okay, so let's go back to our presentation, and I will shortly finish off with the last few slides that I'd like to show you. Now with WalkMe, let's just jump through. We need to go through to the end. You can create and develop the way the balloons look in the same look and feel of your own web page or your own application, so that everything's familiar to the user and nothing looks alien-like, so someone may have hacked my page, or how does this work? Here you can see how the WalkMe player will appear on the site or on the application. You can have it as a triangle. You can design your own shape and form of how you'd like this to look. And this just makes it more familiar, more comfortable for users to actually find the player, find the relevant process, and take it and use it to enhance what they've already learnt previously. Here you can see that it's in a different color on this screenshot. That's just to illustrate the different way, form, and color and shape that the walkthroughs can look like for you. This isn't just an application like Salesforce. This is used for training on internal applications, applications from third-party vendors, where you're able to use an extension in order for walkthroughs to appear on the page, and to be able to provide an overview rather than a specific process for your users to be able to get through. The last slide I would like to show you is the multi-language support that is provided with WalkMe, so that you can have this in any language and multiple languages. So if you're an international organization and you're training people with various backgrounds from various languages, then it's a simple case of, okay, let's choose which that we need, and we can duplicate those walkthroughs again and again in the relevant language. So this is the way WalkMe is able to enhance the training that you learn in the classroom or in a training session, and to make it stick with users, because rather than have to learn and remember everything, you will be able to just click on a walkthrough and follow that process. And it's similar to like having a GPS or satellite navigation for your vehicle. Eventually you do remember how to do the process. So you may be taking a journey from A to B, and it's a complex journey, you're not sure how to get there. You do it once, twice, 3 or 4 times using the satellite navigation, similar to WalkMe, but eventually after you've done it a few times, like we said earlier, practice does make perfect. So you'll eventually be able to execute those processes on your own without necessarily having to use the walkthroughs or having to rely on any external help. And with that, I have concluded my presentation to you, and I'll turn it back to Jason for any questions.
Thank you, Ari, for that presentation. At this point, I would just like to mention, before we get to a question, there is a poll, a question that we created that if people would like, those who are with us can participate and answer. What is the biggest challenge to effectively employ training within your organization? We mentioned 5 different possibilities. Many of them are multiple challenges, but just a nice way to engage some people as well. Have your feedback as well. While people are doing that, Ari, we got a question before about whether WalkMe works on different platforms, across different platforms, and also what about mobile, whether it's mobile app or mobile browser. Maybe you can talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. So long as the platform is HTML based, even if it's mobile, HTML5, then we do support it. So, and I should mention that this does display equally well on all browsers. And yes, so long as it's HTML based, we can support it.
Okay. Very interesting. I enjoyed your presentation. I enjoyed both presentations. I hope people found it informative. I should mention also now that everybody who has registered for this for the webinar will receive the slides and a recording as well. So if you review some of the material that you've seen today, or would like to see any of the information about the biography of the speakers or the ebooks or whatever it might be, feel free to do so at your own pace. You will receive an email as soon as the webinar is over, shortly afterwards. If there aren't any more questions now, I'll just mention that it seems as if the results of the webinar are, the results of the poll question, about 21% of people mentioned that limited budgets are the number one barrier, the number one challenge that they face in effective employee training within your organization. Now, if you'll just allow me 1 second to get back to my last slide here. Okay, we're finishing a little bit early, which is fine. I know everybody is very busy. You have on the screen, if anybody would like to visit any of the websites of the presenting today, WalkMe or Benchball, you also have Twitter handles as well, and some emails of both Ari Tamam and Rajat Paharia. As I mentioned, everybody will be receiving the recording and the slides. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to email us. Hold on 1 second. Before we leave, actually, somebody just asked, Ari, maybe you can answer this one. Somebody just asked, you didn't understand, who is creating the walkthroughs or the WalkMes?
Okay, well that's a good question. Now, creating walkthroughs is fairly simple. We provide an editor, which is a plugin to Firefox, and if you're interested, I can show you this in a demo, but it is very easy to create. We do offer first-time customers the package that we create them for you, because we then test those walkthroughs on each browser to make sure that they play equally well and that there are no errors. So we do bulletproof them for you. But yeah, it's very straightforward to create walkthroughs. You also have a lot of features that I won't go into now, but that can deal with any complexity on a website, allows for branching, condition building. So if you're interested, please contact me and I'd be happy to set up a demo for you.
Okay. So just to conclude, I hope that the presentations that you've heard today and some of the challenges that I spoke about before, I hope that some of this information or all of it was insightful for you and valuable, and that you can utilize some of what was spoken about over the last 50 minutes or so, more memorable, more engaging for employees, and one that will leave true and lasting value. Thank you very much, everybody, once again. And thank you to our presenters, Ari and to Rajat, and to everyone else. Have a great day.